Hi there, you are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name's Matt Wakeling, and this is the show that I've been producing in Sydney, Australia since April 2016. Thank you so much for joining me. Now the format these days is there are 2 weekly shows that drop. On the weekends, we have the interview shows where I talk to guitarists, guitar figures, and midweek we have the iconic album series, and that's when I'm joined by my friends Rob and Gabor. We talk about some of the most influential guitar records in our collection. On the table today, Cold Chisel's 1982 album, Circus Animals. Today's episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
All right, welcome to Iconic Albums. Fellas, congratulations. It's number 10.
Woohoo! Wow. Oh, I thought you meant 10 on the charts. Now I'm disappointed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Episode 10. Oh.
Episode 10. And I'm joined by my friends Rob Rhodes.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Gabor.
And Gabor Josika.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Rob. How you guys doing?
Good. I still don't know why I'm waving. No one can see me waving. Anyway.
We're all waving now. It's been awesome, though. 10 weeks in, this has been so fun. And we've got, as we recorded, I think I've mentioned this before, we usually record 3 episodes in a block and then get those out weekly.
Don't give away the magic.
But here we are for another bunch of 3, and which gets us to episode 10. All right, little bit of maths there. Hey, this week we're up to my turn for an album, and I've chosen Cold Chisel's Circus Animals from 1982. This was their 4th studio album. It was their 5th long player after the live album Swing Shift came out in 81. And this ended up being their first number 1 album, even though by 82, 5 full-length albums, 4 studio records, they were fully entrenched in the Australian music scene and really at the top of their game. So the reason I chose this album, I'm a huge Chisel fan, and Jimmy Barnes and Ian Moss as a solo artist too. This one for me, in terms of guitar playing though, why this stood out for me as an iconic guitar album, I think on this record, Ian Moss, his tone, the tone was getting bigger, if that was possible, because it was already super sweet and big on those first few records. But to me, it sounded like the tone was getting a bit bigger, a bit rawer, perhaps. And there were a bunch of massive hits on this record. You got Nothing I Want, Forever Now, Bow River, When the War Is Over, plus all the other deep cuts, which are a killer. So this was my choice for the Chisel album. I knew I wanted to do a Chisel album somewhere. For the folks at home, for the last 2.5 years, my busiest gig has been playing in a Cold Chisel Jimmy Barnes show here in Sydney and around New South Wales. And that just goes off. And it's been so fun getting my head into these parts of these songs. So I guess for me, Chisel were one of those bands you could know, especially growing up as a kid, you could know heaps of Cold Chisel songs without ever owning one of their records because they were so ubiquitous on the radio, especially from that 3rd album on, from East, which was a huge commercial success. And I was just reading Don Walker, one of the principal writers in Chisel, not the only one by this stage of their career though, was saying, well, East was this huge commercial success, which they wanted. And by Circus Animals, they were kicking back a little bit. Yeah, that's a little bit of background for my thought process for choosing this album. Rob, I'm interested in your connection with Chisel growing up.
Yeah, well, as you said, they were just everywhere, and you couldn't get away. I was on job sites from like 4 years old, and as early as I can remember, my dad would have a little transistor radio on the job site, and if you didn't hear a Cold Chisel song every hour, you thought someone had like lost the tapes or something. It's like, what? No Chisel this hour? And so, yeah, growing up, they were everywhere, and I grew up in Southwest Sydney, so it was they were the Westie band, you know, for all of us. They were flying the flag. They came out of the Elizabeth in Adelaide, which is very similar to, probably from stories was a little bit rougher than where I grew up, but very similar with a lot of government housing areas and blue collar workers, that sort of stuff. So you could immediately identify with those guys and the slog that they went through. And so the songs, like, from early on, they were just everywhere. I think my auntie had East. So every time we went and spun vinyls, you'd put East on. And the first Chisel album I bought was Swing Shift. And I just absolutely love that record. They're on fire. Yeah. That set list is just brilliant. And it's mixed so well as well, that album. It's just crazy good. So it was hard to escape them. They were pretty much the biggest band, and it's arguable that they may still be the biggest band in Australia. You could put them in the top 5 of just walk up to anyone on the street and name an Australian band, and it's going to be, of all ages, it's going to be Cold Chisel, In Excess, Midnight Oil. You know, they're probably going to be the big 3, unless you want to go further back to the bands that came out, like the Easy Beats and AC/DC, but they're going to be the big sort of names that come up, and that's a testament.
Tons of requests for Chisel.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the songs. There's very few that sound dated, and that's another thing. It still sounds like fresh and aggressive, even when you've heard it a million times on the radio. And I think that, apart from the songwriting and the chemistry between everyone in the band, I think that goes a long way to their longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good call, man, for sure. How about you, Gabor? Again, coming to Australia from Austria, sort of early 90s. Yeah.
I missed all that. So I moved to Australia in 93. I think I mentioned it before. 92. I started school in 93, and then I did 94, 95, I did school. Sorry, yeah. So 93.
Do we need to go back to the previous episodes to fact check
I need
him?
to listen back. No, sorry. So I'm getting old and confused. So 93, I moved to Australia, and so I missed all that. And I was a, grunge punk kind of kid that came here and was hanging out with, grunge punk kind of kids here. So I completely missed all that. I'm the absolute black sheep out of this group. So this was my first ever time listening to a Chisel album. I've never listened to Chisel before, ever. I've almost, to a certain degree, rebelled a little bit against Chisel, purely because of when people request. I've been performing, I've been gigging in covers bands, since the late 90s. And when people request it, Chisel songs, and we were at the time funk band with a female singer and stuff like that, R&B, and people go, "Oh, play some Chisel, man." And then when you say no, it's like this shock horror. What? You don't do Chisel? So I think I almost rebelled a little bit against it. So this was my, like with some of the previous albums, this was my very first time ever listening to. I've listened to a couple of songs because I've played a couple of songs in various duos and bands and stuff before. Boy River was one of them, which is on this album. But yeah, my first time ever. So I completely missed all the Chisel Farnsey, Barnsey, wrong.
Are you an
Z,
Australian citizen,
Barnsey
Gabor?
thing.
Have you got a dual citizenship?
That's exactly what people say. That's exactly what. Do you call yourself
How
a
did you
musician
get
in
through?
Australia? I don't know. birthday. Must have been a clerical mistake.
No, there's just 3 answers you need, isn't it? Like Don Bradman, Khe-Sanh, and Hey Hey It's Saturday, and then you'll get your Australian citizenship.
And there's going to be maybe even a new Hey Hey It's Saturday as well now. So
yeah,
That's another can of worms.
absolutely.
I'll be thrilled to see how they do that politically correct in 2021. But anyway,
oh god, yeah,
that is
Especially
another can of
Dickie
worms. It's funny, Gabor, you should say about the cover band thing, because I did years of weddings and sort of top 40 cover band, and still do it and love it. But people would hey, play some Chisel, and sometimes we do Khe-Sanh, but like I'd think, oh man, I would love to do some Chisel. So to end up playing it most Saturdays now,
That's cool. That's great. That's cool.
Is the best. Yeah.
It's funny, and it's still, and like Matt was saying, it's any age group. It's the oldies, but it's the really young kids too that come up and say, "Can you play some Chisel?" So it's. I totally agree with Rob that it's probably there's still one of those bands, that Australian bands, that's still around and still everyone loves them and wants to listen to them and wants to hear their songs.
Yeah. Well, they totally went out on top. So the album we're looking at tonight, Circus Animals, came out March 82. By December 83, they're filming Last Stand, which was their last gig. And in a lot of ways, they really, I reckon they're a little bit responsible for these tribute bands, especially in Sydney anyway, because when they finished up, I think one of the first tribute bands around Sydney anyway were the Cold Chisel shows popping up. I think Swing Shift might have been one of the first ones.
I remember
which had Dave Leslie did a stint with them amongst other players. So yeah, and it's funny because we're not the only. Shout out to Last Stand, by the way. That's the band I play in. But there's a couple of bands around doing this stuff, and we all seem to be busy. And Cold Chisel are back together playing now. Barnesy, I think part of the reason Chisel's remained up front in our consciousness as well is because Jimmy Barnes' solo career he pretty much started the day after Chisel wrapped up. By January 84, he launched his solo career, and it's never stopped, and he's always drawn on a whole bunch of Chisel material in his set. So
it was the only song I kind of knew when I first moved here or heard that he sang on was The Weight that he did with Bad Loves.
Oh yeah, right, okay.
And that was well and truly into his solo
Yeah, that's
career.
what I mean. That was mid '90s. So, but yeah, that was I think my earliest reference of Jimmy Barnes.
Yeah.
God, the amount of like you playing a Cold Chisel show, Matt. So, you know the sheer weight of really just a short time that they were together, but like recording wise, but the amount of songs just in a standard cover band that you play, let alone a Cold Chisel show.
Yeah.
You know, I know over the years I've played Khe-Sanh. I try to avoid it.
Yeah.
But you know, I used to have a rule pre-COVID: if you wanted to hear Khe-Sanh, you had to sing it with me. So I would just play the guitar and someone else would sing it because I'm just like, if you want to hear it, you sing it. That was always a fun little thing to do. But yeah, Flame Trees, Bow River, Rising Sun.
Yeah.
I played all those songs, Forever Now, which we'll get into on this album. But yeah, for one band to have that many songs that you would play over the years, there's not many that can say that.
Yeah, yeah.
I played, just on a side note, I played once in my whole life at a gig. I played Khe-Sanh, and that was at a gig at the Treasury Casino in Brisbane. And it was not. I was filling in on guitar with a band there, and it was not on the set list. And the singer said, "Oh, let's play it." And I said, "I don't know what the chords are." And thankfully, there was a keyboard player. And I was standing next to the bass player, and the bass player was yelling the chords at me while we were playing it. That was my one memory of playing that song live.
What a cracker, man. Now, we easy do like 2.5 hours of stuff. We usually do an hour set and then a 90, 60 and a 90, and just every tune's a hit. And you throw in some solo bars. And there's plenty that we don't get to that are like known songs. So when I get the gig, I don't want to make this about me doing the gig, but I'm just saying these songs are so ingrained in me. I don't think there was a song I didn't know, as in I hadn't heard it a million times out of 40 odd tunes I had to learn. Yeah.
which makes it much easier to learn the songs. Yeah,
Totally,
Yeah.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, it's like osmosis, you know, the arrangements, you know. Yeah.
You just got to find the notes. I mean, that said, let's talk about Mossy's playing. It's interesting when you hear the live albums because his solos are so iconic and such a part of the composition of these songs. You've got to try and play them in the spirit they're delivered. The live albums, Mossy often just goes out and just does whatever he wants, but he's Ian Moss. He's allowed to. So for the rest of us, you got to try and get close to the melodic content and the high points for a lot of these tunes. It's amazing. Let's talk about some key tracks. Rob, what have you got down as some of your standouts?
Oh, look, it's really hard to go past those hits. You know, they were hits for a reason.
Yeah,
They're ridiculously good songs. And, you know, I've gone through periods where I didn't want to hear anything from them or Jimmy Barnes, but you come back to it. So for me, and I'm always attracted to the ones that Mossy sings.
Yeah, okay.
Me too.
Bow River is a standout just for the sheer, like, driving nature and intensity of that song.
Yeah.
And when you hear it, it's the intro there. I don't know what they would like. The timing's way off at times, but it just forces you in to listen to go, oh, what's going on here? You know? So Bow River is a standout. The guitars, Don Walker's keyboards on that song, completely underrated as well.
Yeah,
He's just driving the hell out. And then Forever Now, because to me that is quintessential Ian Moss's guitar tone, right forefront for everyone to hear.
That's a super
and enjoy.
iconic riff. Even I knew that one.
100%.
There's so much air. Like Stephen Prestwich is playing exactly the right thing on drums.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's given space, and that guitar is just it's melodic, like what a singer might sing. You know, and just his whole thing is encapsulated in that intro and in the subsequent guitar solo as well later in the song.
Totally.
It always, for some reason, that main guitar riff, for whatever reason, it always makes me think of Dire Straits. Is there or Mark Knopfler, is there like a song that a similar sort of riff, or is it just me just being silly? But it's a song, I've known that riff for ages and that song for ages, but for some reason it always makes me think of Dire Straits.
See, this is...
That don't, you know.
Yeah, no particular Dire Straits song jumps out to me, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
It's just for whatever reason, that just, I don't know why, it just always I go... Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler. Yeah. For some reason. But I mean, that's a compliment too, because I mean, there's a guitar legend as well, you know, in Mark Knopfler. So
sure. I mean, it's Strat City.
Strat, and very melodic Strat, and I guess he uses a lot of the in-between sounds too, doesn't he, like Knopfler? So
Knopfler does? Yeah. He wants to be cleaner stuff, yeah. Well, Forever Now. Yeah, it's probably my favourite Mossy solo, that outro solo. He is just...
Oh, yeah?
It's like he's floating over that thing. It's just amazing. He starts this legato run and he's again floating over the rhythm, and it just keeps going. It just keeps going till he pulls it in, and it's genius.
The other standout for me was the outro solo on Taipan.
Oh yes, yep.
Like, geez, seriously.
Yeah, that's another one I actually had written. To me, that's a really, generally, like, that's a quite different song to a lot of the rest. It's sort of, to me, that stood out as a song that sort of, it doesn't sound a lot like the rest of the album to me, Taipan.
Yeah, it takes
and the arrangement too. It sort of goes very different bits. It sort of goes from quite, it changes quite drastically.
That's what I like about the solo. So when, Rob, you're talking about that solo, it's such a journey in that tune. Like he's playing over one chord for a while, then he plays over the verse, and then there's some ascending sort of chord progression. Yeah. It sort of reminded me, not in execution, but it reminded me a little bit of the Sweet Child of Mine solo at the end, where Slash is playing over these different kind of chapters. It feels like that to me, the Taipan solo. But he is wailing on that, man.
Yeah, and he improvised. That's why he's so different live. And I've had conversations with people where they said they've seen him in absolute stellar form and then be off, because he really is that gypsy soul that everyone talks about,
Right.
and just gets in the moment and improvises a lot. And from someone, I'm not saying I'm in his category, but in a similar way that I approach my guitar playing that way, is that when you feel off, nothing works. Like if you're off mentally or emotionally, then that comes out in your playing. And he's definitely that type of guitar player where you know where he's at from the first moment he starts playing.
Nice, man. Very cool. Any other moments you wanna highlight for us, Rob?
No, I think those two songs and that Taipan outro for me were absolute stands out. And like When the War Is Over, who doesn't get a little bit teared up during that song then want to like start breaking furniture when Jimmy comes in at the end. It's just like, I'm being lullaby sweet, and then let's just destroy everything I've built at the end. It's just that light and dark that those two have going on is just the juxtaposed vocals work so well. Yeah. And Steve Prestwich, his harmonies are great. Yeah. I think they're all the standouts for me.
Yeah. I love it in Bow River when Barnsey comes in as well vocally. It just...
It's like a formula that works so well.
Like it's already peaking and you just want to go a little harder. Bring Jimmy in, man. You take this one, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Man, yeah. I mean, Mossy's such a great singer. Such a beautiful tone. I love Barnsey too. There's just so much energy and passion. I love hearing him sing. He could sing anything. He could sing. I heard him sing on Triple M. I heard him do an acoustic version of Dancing Queen. Yeah. And it was fantastic. It was so good.
I remember seeing him. Was it at the Olympics in Sydney, the closing ceremony or opening ceremony, and they played Land Down Under? And he was on stage, and he was somewhere in the back, nowhere near microphones, and he was just there going, like veins popping out, screaming as loud, and he was louder than the singer right at the microphone.
Oh man!
Oh yeah, he's not a subtle background
definitely not
singer.
subtle,
like
no.
You hear him on some of those Richard Clapton like live things in Glory Road.
Right.
And you can just hear him. He's so like identifiable in the background. You're like, oh yeah, it's Jimmy Barnes singing harmonies. You can just hear it. And
wow. Him
and Diesel have done a lot of things in the past. And he does backing vocals on the cover that Diesel does of Have Love Will Travel, which was a couple of records ago. Yeah, wow. And you can just hear, Jimmy comes in and does some lead, but there's no backing vocal when it comes to him on a track.
Yeah, man.
It's
it's so good.
He's just he's been successful for a reason because he really hasn't ever compromised who he is or changed. He's kind of AC/DC in a way, that same way. You know what you're going to get.
Similar sort of voice too, actually. Yes.
Yeah. I did a little bit of work when I did some work at the studio in Bowral. It was called, like I said, during the Diesel episode. That was I think it was called the White House when I was there. It was called Freight Train.
Yeah.
So the engineer producer we worked with had worked with Barnsey during some of his solo career. So we were asking him questions all the time. What did Jimmy do here? And he would say Jimmy would want to sing in the control room. He would do one take. His pitch would be perfect, and he'd just sort of whack you on the back of the head if you wanted a bit more of himself out of those studio monitors. But the pitch just killing it. So, oh man, there you go. Gabor, again, this will be interesting. Your unique take.
Yes, on this. And I may lose my Australian citizenship now. So I think, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, but I think I'm allergic to Barnsey.
I get it. I do get it. I understand.
To me, okay. So this is what I wrote down, right? So
Here we go.
And mind, this is
Strap in, folks.
I've heard some of the songs before. There's going to be, I think I need to move or something because there's going to be riots outside of my house. But anyway, No, and I don't mean it in a bad way. This is just totally like, because I haven't really listened to it much before. The things I wrote down is great guitar sound. Love the keyboards.
Yeah.
Throughout, I thought keyboard, piano.
Okay.
Again, I don't know anything about them, but I thought it was great keyboard playing. Drummer's great. Drum sound is great. Okay, then when it comes to songs, right? So for me, the standout songs, I wrote down Bow River, Forever Now, Taipan, Hound Dog.
Yeah.
When the War Is Over. And then, is it Letter to Alan? Is it like a secret song at the end or something?
Yeah.
It seemed to be coming in late or something. It's that piano ballad that then goes some completely different and then goes back to a piano ballad.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah,
The last
track
track
on the album. Yeah,
The last
track
track
on the album.
It was just, it seemed where I listened to it, seemed to come sort of after the track before. So I don't know. I wasn't sure if it was a secret track or, like the song before ended and then there was a gap of, 30 seconds and then that song started. So I don't know if it was just put together funny when I listened to it. Anyway, okay, so what I've written down for Bow River, that's a song I knew because I played it in a duo with a guy up here.
Yep.
But the thing I wrote down is I like the voice. I like it because it's not Barnsey. And then I went, spoke too early, here's Barnsey. Because he comes in later on.
Can I just jump in here? I just need to just pop in, just to save a lot of editing from me. Some of the opinions expressed on iconic albums are not necessarily representing the Guitar Speak podcast. Okay, sorry, Gabor.
Sorry,
Keep going,
Australia.
man.
Sorry, Australia.
No, I like the diversity. Come on.
Yeah, it's all good. Sorry.
I don't know Barnsey. Okay.
I just feel bad anytime you talk to an Australian who grew up in those days, and you say that, I don't know, Barnsey.
Yeah.
You get very weird looks.
Yeah.
So,
Like, go to your room.
yeah, go sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
Sorry, man. Keep going.
So then I wrote Forever Now. Very iconic riff. It always reminds me of Mark Knopfler Dire Straits for some reason. And great outro solo. Taipan, interesting song, good arrangement, great solo. Hound Dog, I like that sort of Peter Gunn style spy movie riff kind of
cool
thing.
Riffs,
that sort of low
definitely.
notes. And throughout the whole song, he does a lot of sort of lickage. Is that the word? Like little licks, and mostly on the lower strings. And I always liked that. That's always a thing I really, really dug. Then I wrote For When the War Is Over. Again, doesn't seem to be Barnsey. And I spoke too soon again. And then Letter to Alan. It went somewhere really unexpected after the ballad, and then back to the ballad again. And good solo in it as well, I wrote. Or at the end, good solo at the end.
Yeah.
So that was my notes. So I will now accept my punishment.
So you're just losing subscribers on the Super Awesome Happy Time Photo Show right now. It's going. I can hear it going.
So, yeah.
It's like the
unprecedented.
It's like do you remember the worm on those political debates that would go in real time? It's just like dropping down.
Way down. Way down.
Oh, man, we're going to take a short break on the Guitar Speak podcast. We've got to talk to Gabor and we'll be right back.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man, look, there's no wrong answers.
I'm fired.
This is music. There's no wrong answers, okay?
Okay.
But you're wrong.
Yeah. I know.
This episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott, ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and the McNally Smith College of Music. I was one of the beta testers for the course and can say as a music educator, I was really impressed by the logical sequence of learning. The course has also been endorsed by players such as Brett Garsed and Greg Cupp. For more details, check out the links in our show notes. All right, welcome back to Iconic Albums. We're talking about Cold Chisel's Circus Animals album from '82. And of course, the guitar player is Ian Moss, just doing some fantastic stuff. So my standout tracks, look, it's kind of really similar. I think, Rob, you nailed it when you said the hits are hits for a reason. I sort of already mentioned Forever Now. Bow River, that the solo goes ballistic. I think a big reason for that is the band. Those, when they, the ba, 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 when they do those little accents, then they keep motoring on. It just builds such momentum. Yeah, like a lot of, I know, like Shook Me All Night Long. You know, the solo, the first half, the band's all punching and then they just slam it home. I love that kind of rhythmic kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to fault those. Man, shout out to the late great Steve Presswich on drums, who wrote Forever Now and When the War Is Over.
The drummer wrote them. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone in the band wrote. Phil Small, the bass player, he didn't write anything on this album, but he's got plenty of other credits. He wrote My Baby, huge hit off East. But everyone else wrote. Jimmy wrote You Got Nothing I Want, the opening track, which is just a killer, which was a response to the American record company's interest and support of Chisel when they were trying to break it over there. And
okay.
apparently that song came back to bite him a little bit when his solo career was starting to make some moves in America. There were still some executives hanging around that remembered that. That's the story anyway, who knows. Yeah, I guess one of the things I love about Chisel, full stop, is that they are aggressive and rocking, but there's all this sophisticated writing as well behind the scenes. So You Got Nothing I Want, it's pretty in-your-face rock and roll tune. You come out of this great solo section and there's this really clever bridge that kind of modulates and then brings them back to the one. It's it's genius songwriting. Wild Colonial, boy, that's an interesting track. A little bit of multimeter in the front. They move between 4 and 3 time signatures. It's kind of somewhat progressive. One of the things Don Walker said about this record is, like I mentioned at the start, they were sort of kicking against the commercial success of East, so they were trying to experiment a little bit just within their own 4 walls. To drop another Chisel. Or was that a Barnsey song? I can't remember.
No, that was Chisel.
That's Chisel.
Yeah, 4 walls. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's a very Australian album. So many Australian references in this record, which is cool. Which I guess is why, again, a lot of Australians resonated with this band because they were singing about. I think Nambucca gets a mention, doesn't it?
Yeah, I did hear that.
I remember there was something about Nambucca.
These quintessential Australian songs. Even Kaysan, which we've already mentioned, we've all played willingly or otherwise on a gig. I think because it's become a bogan anthem, but as we all know, the lyrics are really
not bogan. Yeah,
no, really full on account of post-traumatic stress disorder from an Australian veteran. So yeah, but I think they're my main standouts. When the war is over, man, the solo in that, it's beautiful and spells out the chord changes. It's like every note's perfect. The Forever Now intro is really pulling out some beautiful chord tones, which is interesting because the idea I get from Mossy growing up in Alice Springs, he was very much self-taught as a guitar player, but there's a whole level of sophistication on top of the blues rock and roll thing.
Yeah, and he never seems to overplay. Like, it's really hard on anything of theirs, even in the live stuff.
Yeah.
He always seems to play the right thing for just the right amount of time. Mm-hmm. He can do the slow build like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And obviously the tone is there, which is a big part of his, whole thing.
Yeah.
Basically it's a Strat into a really loud Marshall, but I'm sure we'll get into the gear.
Yeah.
But it's just, he's one of those guys where you go, he never, there's moments like Taipan and Bow River where you could argue that he gets a bit shreddy.
Yeah.
But it's within context.
Oh, definitely.
It's not out of the, the realms of what the song requires, which is, that's why they're iconic guitar solos within iconic songs.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, yeah, let's talk about some of the tones and some of the gear. So early 80s, there's not heaps of documentation. So I took a leaf out of Rob's book and I was watching old live videos and pressing pause and And Mossy, by his own admission, has been swapping gear in and out of his rig since day one. But there are some very important parts of the tonal recipe. So yes, a Strat or something that looks like a Strat and that functions as a Strat, whether it was built by Fender or not. A Marshall and something to boost that Marshall with. So they're the quick notes. Rob, did you have some stuff you mentioned? Peach.
Yeah, shout out to Stewie Kent, who when I was doing research for this album, his name popped up in the forums. For anyone up here on the Northern Rivers knows Stewie Kent from the band Epic. He's a Marshall aficionado. He likes to tinker, and
Awesome.
He's got a wall of Marshalls, like a literal wall of Marshalls. But he said from the things that he found out over the years and actually got from Mossy directly, for the recording of that, he was using a Schecter Telly a lot at that time.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And his favourite Mongol Strat at the time, which was a neck from a 62 on a 70s body.
Right.
And somewhere between this album and the next album, what was the next album? 20th Century?
Let me check.
He put EMGs in it.
I was going to ask because I've heard stories about him using EMGs.
Yeah, and they stayed in like right through to
Yeah.
when he recorded and toured Matchbook. So he did that a lot. Marshall Super Lead 100.
Yep.
Mods. He was talking about mods too, that at some point he had a bright cap like changed or removed and the tone stack was disconnected. And I also read that it was modded with a master volume. And yeah, as you said, the boosting came from a Boss overdrive. So I guess in the yellow OD1, which can be seen on the floor of the Playroom footage that you might have, one of the ones you were watching on YouTube, Matt.
Yeah.
And the chorus sound,
Yep.
which has been quoted, and it's all over Circus Animals and subsequent things, was a Yamaha rack mount analog delay.
Interesting.
And he was quoted as saying liking the thick hollow tube sound that delay delivered. So kind of, that's where you're getting that, I guess, the high mids, that tubular sound. Very much like that Satriani neck sound,
Yeah,
It's got
interesting.
it's like hollow. But yeah, that's sort of the stuff that I could get. And obviously, mate, I used to play cranked high watts and over the years a Silverface Fender
Yeah.
early on.
Okay.
But yeah, that was what I could get. And thanks again to Stewie
Yeah,
for
that's cool.
his contribution.
Yeah, nice. I've it's interesting that real chorusy delayed sound. I mean, that's all over the Swing Shift record as well. If anything, I thought this record was a little drier than the live album in terms of chorusy sounds and things like that. But yeah, that's good. Yeah, I found some similar stuff to you, but man, that's a good dive there, Rob. That's awesome. I always associate that the Forever Now and the When the War Is Over tone. I always think a Strat with a tube screamer and a Marshall. Now, I guess the thing, and Gabor, you might jump in here, the Boss OD1 and the subsequent SD1, the Super Overdrive, they share a very similar topography with the tube screamer.
They do, I believe. The very early OD1s had a different chips in it, but I think it was even the what is it, IC, not IC, 4558, whatever it is, the chip that's in a tube screamer is also the one that's later on in the OD1. So they are very similar.
Yeah. I guess tonally too, they do a similar job. I know one's symmetrical, one's not. I can never remember which one is in terms of the clipping.
I can never remember that stuff either.
But
There was an Ibanez Strat too. Sorry, I missed.
Oh, okay.
His main guitar for a while was an Ibanez Strat.
Mm-hmm.
So he got Schecter Tellys and Ibanez Strats. And I know he was one of the guys that was responsible for the popularity of profile Strats, because I believe he had a profile Strat for a while there prior to this. But yeah, they apparently copied the Japanese, did the profile series based on a 57 Strat.
yeah,
I think
right.
from memory, so when you come across them, and I've owned one, It was a bit dead sounding, so I didn't hold on to it. But there have been good ones. And to bring it back, Diesel used a Profile as his backup for a long time. So that was like the first big, of course, Yamaha were here, but in Australia, Profile was like our MIJ brand. And a lot of people were using Profiles. The Silhouette was the top of the range.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I just went off on a tangent.
No, that's
there.
cool. I remember Randall Waller, Aussie who ended up playing with Shania Twain, and he did Dragon and Rose Tattoo.
Beast.
Man, what a dude. He had a pair of Profiles too that he took with him. They were his main guitars when he first went to the States for the Shania gig, and they had the EMGs in there. One had a humbucker and the other with 3 singles, and cool guitars. Got to play one once, loved it. I guess
Got to check them out.
Yeah, Mossy by this stage, like you said, Rob, he wasn't onto the EMG pickups yet. He wasn't reversing the bridge pickup yet. That's a thing he did later in the 80s. So the Jimi Hendrix idea that the angle of the Strat, so the treble strings, the pickup's a little close to the neck, is angled towards the neck, and the bridge, the bass strings, it's angled more towards the...
And it makes more sense. Like anybody who thinks about a Strat bridge pickup,
Yes,
it makes more sense.
absolutely.
Well, I mean, Leo Fender wasn't a musician, and he did a lot of things. He called a lot of things the wrong thing too. So, he didn't really know about that sort of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I mean, it's the whole vibrato tremolo thing, isn't it? That's right. He got that wrong.
that back to front.
was he. Yeah.
Happy birthday, Leo Fender. He had his birthday this month too, by the way.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Leo.
Hey, back to, if I can just stay on the Boss Overdrive just for a moment, the whole tonal thing is it's got a really pronounced mid-range, and it rolls off a little bit of bottom end, and it rolls off some top end. So you get a lot of penetration in a mix and that singing sound. And I definitely hear that on Forever Now and When the War Is Over. But, and I do think that's the quintessential Mossy tone, just to jump on with your thought again there, Rob. But I don't hear that a lot on the rest of the record. It sounds a little more full range when he's boosting. Now, I have read, hold on to your hat, Gabor, I have read that he's used a rat at times as well into those ranges.
Good
I read
man.
that
See,
too.
I'm starting to like him more and more.
There you go. Sometimes Bill Lawrence pickups, which were a higher output single coil back in the day. Again, pre-EMG. He must have loved those EMGs.
That's the good. I think the Bill Lawrences were in that Ibanez, from what Stewie was saying.
Okay, yep.
And I read on that forum too from Dwayne Ledford. Shout out to Dwayne.
Oh, yeah,
great
amp builder.
in Australia. He said he did work on a one of Mossy's amps. I won't get this verbatim because I just read the forum last night. But he said there was a high gain mod in his Marshall that he ended up taking out for Mossy. So there was a point there in the 80s that he had that high gain mod on the Marshall that got taken off. So that might be one of the mods that Stewie was talking about too.
Okay. Hey, I've got a theory about Strats, and I want to run it by you guys.
Right, hit me.
I'm a Strat guy, so just from what I've played, so this is bad podcasting. The brown one behind me, I've been playing that for over 20 years. Recently got another Strat style built. So I love them, and I've played them all my life. But I reckon until you get to turn them up a bit, an amp up a bit to run your Strat into, they can be like essentially a thin guitar without some volume going on. I think more than most guitars I've played anyway, the Strat needs a loud amp for it to actually sing and to express.
It needs that compression. I mean, it's the same. It's and you can really tell with the Strat when you play it at lower levels.
Yeah.
If you use a compressor, it starts sounding, it fattens up and becomes bigger. It really needs that natural amp compression. And it's, a lot of the iconic sort of Strat guys, they absolutely cranked the bejeebus out of their amps. And I mean, there's a reason why they did that. Because it made it work.
I think we talked about that before with the interaction of the pickups picking up the sound that's coming back from the speakers. So this whole relationship of the harmonic content. You're getting the vibration as not just from the string, but from the guitar and the air.
Well, the body
that's being
resonates,
pushed. And that's why Strats, they get bigger as you get louder because they're very traditionally low output pickups, and that's when you start playing with fatter strings and louder amps that you get that Stevie Ray effect, and those other guitar players that have gotten that sound.
Yeah. Totally. So
but it's hard to sit here with like a bedroom volume and get the Strat to sound the way you hear it in your head. And I think maybe a lot of people struggle. And I know I've moved away from Strats to P90 style Gibson guitars because those things, they at any volume, they get the sound that you want.
That bark,
you don't have to fight it so hard.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Man, just all the low level gigs I did on my Strat styles, and once I got to be a bit loud when I joined the Chisel show.
That's it, man. That's
what happens. So, thanks, Mossy. I mean, you can hear some of those long notes feeding back in. I think it's the end of the second Forever Now solo, and in a bit of When the War Is Over. And again, it's that very thick mid-range tone that's going to feed back quicker than others, perhaps. But I can hear that, so I think, all right, he's playing loud. That's how he's getting some of that tone as well. Because the sustain, like you guys are saying, the sustain, there's not a lot of gain. Like when we say Mossy high gain, his version of high gain compared to, I don't know, Slipknot or something, it's a totally different can of worms there.
It's a similar thing. We bring it back to Blackmore. You know, those cranked Marshalls that aren't super overdriven, they're pushed a little bit with a Strat, and you can't get that sound at the lower volumes.
It's almost like having a clean sound that has that distortion sustain. Again, because of the compression, because the tubes just compress so much. Yeah. It's a special sort of thing.
Yeah.
That unless you have stood in front of a really loud amp, that's I guess one of the downsides of all modelers and all that stuff nowadays. You can't get that because that interaction is just not there.
Yeah. Hey, fun story I heard. Maybe in the last couple of years, Mossy did look into the modelling stuff. He booked some time in Stage Store with a couple of Fractal folks. And he's still playing amps these days.
Yeah.
So that was that story. Awesome. All right. I mean, we could go on all night about Mossy's various guitars. These days he's playing.
Well, we could, but probably Gabor could.
Well, I'm still writing I Will Love Barnsey 1,000 times on the blackboard.
So
I'm
folks,
only about halfway through, so
we had to cut the trivia version of tonight's episode.
All right. Well, there you go. Let's wrap it there, I reckon. Cold Chisel, Circus Animals from 82. Amazing record. Ian Moss, totally on top of his game. It's a great record. Rob and Gabor, thanks so much for talking about it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Rob.
Quick shout out, Gabor. How can we find out more about your anti-Australian content creation?
Oh, dear. Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to relocate to a different country now. But once I'm there, in the meantime, you can find me. Please no hate. You can find the Super Fun Awesome Happy Time pedal show. All one word, so Super Fun Awesome Happy Time pedal show on YouTube, and we do, guitar and amp and pedal reviews and all that sort of stuff, and just general silly stuff. Yes, if you can forgive me, come and check that out.
It's a great show. Yeah, and Rob?
Just my main gig is Living in the 70s, so just Living in the 70s live on Facebook. Probably the best place to get everything.
All right, awesome. Guys, thanks again, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Ciao.
All right, thanks for joining us for another Guitar Speak podcast, Iconic Albums. I've really enjoyed putting these conversations together with Rob and Gabor, and it's been a really cool addition to our podcast show, which every week has deep dive one-on-one interviews as well. That's been our bread and butter for the last 5 years, and that will be continuing as well. Thanks to Fretboard Biology for sponsoring today's episode. Check out the links in the show notes. All right, my name's Matt Wakeling. You've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. And in the words of Michael Schenker, German guitarist from UFO, the Scorpions, and MSG,
keep rocking, keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking indeed. I'll catch you next time. Bye now.